Mhm. Cool. Okay. Wicked. Okay. Genre. Well, I did not fun. I can see, like, why people would like it. Just a little bit. But I did catch it. It's interesting. And also the thing is that Bob Derry, who's the host I just love him, and I kind of want to be more of him, but that's not fair. Because probably a lot of us have. Yeah. I love Zachariah. He's such a good player. He's so nice. Yeah, big fan. But I did study a little bit, but that's not I studied a little bit last but before that, he wasn't teaching at Birmingham, but he does stuff with my aunt and places. So that doesn't surprise me that Zachariah has been taught on him. And he's great. Done great. Oh, okay. Olivia? Okay. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That makes sense. She's but right now, so that makes sense. It's okay. Okay. I'm glad this is a priority
Hello, my friends, Gary Goals, and fellow poets. Welcome back to Conversing with Poets. Tonight, we finally have another guest, and I'm really, really excited for you to meet them. But before we do any of that, let's just quickly catch up on the chat. Hello, Delgal. Hello, Dazzle in the Dark. Hello, Danny and Mitch. Hello, Yoda. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hello, Avis Pope. I don't believe I've seen you in one of these streams before, so thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yoda says I'm on holidays and becoming more functional. That's good. Lost my decision-making ability. That's not so good. Taken a week. Hi, Daniel, Mitch, and Dazzle. Hello, Yoda. Welcome back. I hope that you um, regain your decision-making ability. So, without any further ado, I'm going to bring our guest in, Ellie. So let me just switch over to that. Hello, Ellie. Welcome to Conversing with Poets. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we're going to be talking about community and the importance of community and how much you do for the UK poetry scene, which because it's just phenomenal. But yes, hello. And also in part two, we're going to talk about your new pamphlet as well, Rein It In. So congratulations on that, I suppose. Let's get a few congratulations in the chat box, guys.
That's
How are
very
you doing,
kind.
Ellie?
It's really cool to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Um, yeah, and hello everyone. This is really
Absolutely.
cool.
I just have to you guys, my subscribers know that I'm just terrible with technology. So if there is an echo, I apologize. I've done everything to my ability to stop the echo, but my ability isn't very good. So so I apologize.
I don't know
Delgal says
how you.
congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. It feels very surreal. Yeah, and it's currently only available for pre-order, so I haven't actually held it in my hands yet, which still so it still doesn't really feel real.
Oh,
I don't know when it will. I'll let you know.
that's yeah,
But it's really
that's a
exciting.
great feeling to hold it in your hand. So I can't wait for you to have
Mm,
that moment. That's a special moment.
yeah, for sure, definitely. Yeah.
So I'll just give it another. I normally give it until five past, just for people to start dropping in. Hello, Mythical Meter. Yoda says congratulations. Avis says congratulations.
Thank
Mythical
you.
Meter says hi, poets far and wide. Hello, Mythical Meter. Welcome back to the live stream. Um, so Ellie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself while we kind of wait for more people to drop in? How did you get into poetry?
That's a great question. I think, like many of us, I it's hard to say when the exact moment was, but we're going to try anyway. I think I, when I was 18, I went through this like big breakup, and then I wrote every single day for a month, and then I made a very long poem out of that. I wish to never read that. I don't know where it is. I never want to see that. But that was kind of my first go at it, I guess, properly. And then I went to the University of Birmingham, and I took for my undergrad English and creative writing, just because I always had an interest in writing, but I didn't, it wasn't fully formed yet. And so, but that was where, I was taught under some amazing poets, and that was where I kind of fell in love with it. But it was actually really through the community, which is great to be talking about today. It was through the poetry community in Birmingham that really got me wanting to continue doing it and to go to open mic nights and perform. And that was kind of how it really grew, and the people and the connections that you make through that, who are all writing. And you think, oh my God, this is amazing. And then sharing and all of that kind of stuff. So that was when I really considered myself a poet, was through going to all of the poetry nights that I could in Birmingham, and then running them, and then facilitating, and kind of grew from there, really. But Yeah, so I'd say probably considered myself a poet maybe like around 2019, that kind of
Okay.
time. So it doesn't feel like very long.
Yeah, yeah. To be honest, since COVID, my sort of whole idea of time is just completely messed up when I
Oh,
think, oh, 2016 wasn't, well, doesn't feel like that long ago. And then you actually kind of sit down and figure out, actually, it was quite a long time ago, nearly, what, 7 years ago,
yeah.
8 years ago. It's crazy. Would you say you have any standout influences in your work?
Oh, for sure. You mean in terms of other poets that have
Yes, yeah,
influenced
yeah,
me?
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's I have a few. I have loads. Actually, this is strategic, but behind me looks really boring, but in front of me I've got like loads of poetry books. So this is great because I can kind of see my influences in front of me. One of the most encouraging influences that I had, who is someone that I really look up to, is Luke Kennard, who is an award-winning poet who has been teaching and writing for years and years and years and years. And he was one of my lecturers at uni, which I was so thankful for. And the feedback that he would give would just be so encouraging, even if it was like the worst thing ever. He would always have so much positivity to put into it and encouragement. So, in terms of like an encouraging voice and mentor, it would definitely be Luke Kennard. Um, in terms of performance style and um, pushing boundaries with performance and doing clever things with language, always, every day, Jasmine Gardosi. They are the current Birmingham Poet Laureate. Um, and it's just incredible, also award winning and all of that stuff. And they just always push the boat out. So they do like beatboxing and poetry together. These are not things that I necessarily do myself, but they're things that I've been like, oh, that's a poem. Oh, cool. And then can kind of influence you a little bit that way. But in terms of my writing, recent influences have been Kim Moore, who is just absolutely incredible. She won the Forward Prize a couple of years ago for her collection All the Men I Never Married. That poetry collection changed my life, and it changed like the kinds of poems that I was writing too. So she's a huge influence on me. Um, and also definitely like Melissa Leah Horton for being very confessional, kind of stream of consciousness style. Um, so loads of influences. One person that I've been influenced in terms of community building and navigating that. Definitely poets like Tyrone Lewis, who just does a lot of things and a lot in the community and is also a great poet too. Um,
And photographer,
so
if I'm not
many.
mistaken.
Yeah, he's a photographer, videographer. I don't know how I've managed this. I do. I'm friends with him. That's how I've managed this. But which is I'm very grateful for. But he comes to my poetry nights and does the photography, which is great because that's his like day job. Is like he's literally yeah. So that's great. I just remembered someone else who's a big influence on me. They've slipped my mind. Oh, okay. So this for me was how this person is who got me into the scene and started really making me interested in the craft of poetry. Was someone who was pivotal in Birmingham, but then moved back to California where he originates from, and that's Sean Coletti. Um, excellent community builder and extremely good. I'm just looking at his pamphlet now. Like, yeah, he's great. I need to reread that. So, none of us are made in a vacuum, least of all poets. So, I think it's a great question because there are so many, there are countless, and there are way more that are in the acknowledgements of my book, but like there's just loads.
Nice.
Too
I
many
like
to
it.
say.
You received a few
Yeah.
hearts during that as well. In the chat box, a few hearts came up. So awesome stuff.
Sweet.
So we were talking just before we went live, and I didn't want to get it too like into it, so we didn't have to repeat ourselves. But it's funny how the universe works because we both went to Verve back in February. I made
Mhm.
two videos on that actually. I went on the Thursday I was streaming. It's funny, I was streaming on the Thursday on the first night, but I was so tired from the coach ride up that I was just laying in bed, and there was a few subscribers who joined and thought I was in a hospital bed, and they were like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Um, but and then I did another sort of video after the fact, just kind of singing Verve's praises, basically. But it's funny how
Mm.
the universe works because we we sat next to each other, right, in the dreams workshop. How did you find that workshop? Because I was telling my subscribers, and I don't know if you remember, the reason I did that
Mm.
workshop was more because there wasn't too much going on the Friday. So I
Oh,
don't
okay.
tend to do workshops to write. Like I need this. I'm in a garden shed, if you didn't know, and like I need to be in this
Ooh.
space to write. So I kind of just went there to be a sponge and soak it all up. But what? How did you find that
Mm.
workshop?
That's a really interesting point that you made about being in a workshop and the experience of that, because I think there are, whilst a lot of people might think, I'm going to go to a workshop so I can write loads and loads, that's not always the best thing or the thing that is most natural to everyone. So that's just a really nice, um, take to hear about going. I wasn't initially going to go to that workshop, but a friend of mine who's also a great poet, um, I was kind of hanging out with her and chatting, and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to go to this workshop." And then I think that this was the one that applied to. I might be lying, but anyway, so I kind of went accidentally, basically. But the other thing that drew me to that workshop was Holly Pester. I have a mentor who is one of my former lecturers, also at Birmingham, a poet called George Tooley, who's great. And he has been telling me for ages, you need to engage with Holly Pester's work. You would love her. She is a bit of you. And so I was like, okay. And then so it felt, when I saw her name there, I thought, okay, I have to go. Um, and I'm really glad I did. I found it a really interesting workshop. I also like going to workshops to pick up things to steal for my own poetry workshops, right? Or just thinking, oh, okay, well, how could I do this in my own practice moving forwards? There was something really nice about like tapping into the subconscious and thinking about those things. And one of the prompts that she gave that I thought was really cool was where we had to alternate between something that happened in real life and something that happened in a dream. I just thought that was really fun and definitely something I'm going to be doing more of. So I got a lot out of it, and even just hearing her talk about poetry was also really rewarding. And I also loved seeing her. Did you see her performance, the cafe?
Cafe,
I
yeah,
also
yeah.
thought so interesting and fascinating, and yeah, so I'm really glad that I went, and it was crazy that we sat next to each other. Yeah, it's just a very small world, and poetry is even smaller.
Well, that's a perfect. Do you know who else was in that workshop with us? Imogen Wade, who just won the National Poetry Prize about
Flipping heck.
being mugged in New York. She was, yeah, she was sitting next to Holly as well. So there was quite, it was an interesting workshop. Um, you guys were writing all these amazing poems, and you know that exercise where we had to pick random words.
Mm.
I had like punch, prawn. So I wrote a poem about prawns punching people onto the ocean, and then you guys are
That's
coming up with all
great.
these amazing poems. Um, but yeah, so that's I kind of wanted to bring that up just because for me, coming back from Birmingham, and we just spoke about this very briefly before we went live, like just the atmosphere and the community in Birmingham. I came back like very jealous of the community that they've got because they all seemed so close. They were all hugging each other before, when they saw each other, and it's just really weird how the universe works. I was sitting next to you, and on my coach journey back, I was like, I really hope London has something like that. And so I started looking for poetry events in London, and there you were doing all your amazing things with everything poetry. So yeah, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank
For the
you.
but it's not even the London scene, it's like the UK scene as well. Do you want to just talk about everything poetry real quick before we kind of really dive into community?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Thank you for
Oh,
acknowledging
sorry,
that. It's
before you start, sorry, I just want to say hello to Garage Poets who's just dropped in. He's one of our moderators. So hello, Garage Poets. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, Ellie.
hello. No, that's okay. Hello, hello. Welcome. Um, the question of everything poetry night. So I was a poet that was I'm a Londoner, born and raised, but went to uni in Birmingham. And while I was there, like I mentioned, I kind of went to the nights there. I went to sorry, this is going to be a long answer. And the first night that I really went to is one of I believe the longest running poetry night in Birmingham, and it was started by the poet I mentioned earlier, Sean Coletti, who moved to the UK, ended up doing a PhD along is a peer of Luke Howard, and it was just an amazing guy. And he set up Grizzly Pear, which was my first foray into poetry. And anyway, fast forward like 3 years, I was then running Grizzly Pear, which was a real honour. I was running it alongside another fantastic poet called Matt Sowerby, who's also a great friend of mine. He's just lovely. Um, so that was my first kind of taste of running a night and community building in that way. And it was really a beautiful thing to be running such a long standing night. I think it was started in like 2009 or something, which is crazy. It survived the pandemic, which many nights didn't. Especially in Birmingham, the poetry scene was hit really badly by COVID, as London was. But that was kind of my first taste of hosting, and I just loved it. There's something about being a host where you're bringing the energy up and you're making everyone really excited, but then it's not about you. You can kind of get off and then let everyone else have their time. So it feels really lovely and kind of humbling in many beautiful ways. And so when I moved back to London, well, actually around that night, whilst living in London, which was very chaotic, so I was going up to Birmingham every month just to do that. It was crazy for
Wow.
free. There was, it was a university. It's a university-run night, so there's no money. But I still loved it. And so when that was coming to an end, I was like, I'm going to be really sad. I need to have something else. I need to start something new. And at that point, I had gone to a couple of the nights in London and was scoping out the scene. And I went to Off the Chest, which is an excellent poetry night, and it's run by Ella and Iftika. And I really liked Iftika's hosting style. I liked both of their hosting style, but I had a conversation with Ifti afterwards and had conversations with him. We got a drink and talked about hosting and community. And then I was in a pub in New Cross. And whilst I was in this pub, I was catching up with a friend I hadn't seen in 9 years. And it was a really cute, cozy pub. And I was like, this is really nice. And it's right next to a station, which is really easy to get to. I wonder if they do a night here. And I got chatting with who I found out was the manager at the bar. And she was like, yeah, we're definitely interested in hosting. And it was really funny because it was like the place actually inspired me to make the night because it was really lovely. And then I said, cool, I'm going to start a night here. This was October 2022. I was like, I'd love to start a night here. I'll bring you customers to your pub on a Monday. That'd be great. And she said, that's awesome. So my first ever Everything Poetry Night was in November of 2022. And that's where it all began, really. Unfortunately, the pub went out of business. Turns out it was too good to be true, that specific location, because they didn't have any customers. And so when it comes to finding like a venue for a poetry night, you need somewhere that's like accessible, easy to get to, and also free, because there's no money in poetry and there's no money in running events. Um, so, I was like, it's really important. So it's kind of a mutually agreed thing where I'm going, okay, well, I'll bring some poets and at least everyone will get at least a drink. That's like some business. And then it kind of works out like that. But it was too good to be true. They didn't have enough customers in general. And then I did one everything poetry night in a random pub in Peckham, which went really well. It was like kind of an old man's pub, which is not, it's really funny. It's not the vibe of my night at all. Poetry is very queer, is very like, and this was a kind of like geezer pub, but it worked out. It was great. And then I found a more permanent home starting in I think it was April 2023 at a bar and hostel in Waterloo, and we're still running it there now. They really want to keep us because it's great business and it's a great time, and I get on with all of the bar staff and I know all of them. But at this point, there are so many people who come, it's not big enough. So I'm kind of, I don't know what the future will be, but I'm very happy in the present and I'm very grateful with what I'm building and what is being built. Yeah, bit of a history on that one.
But I mean, that's awesome. That's awesome. What I do really kind of want to give you a round of applause for, though, is that is all really great, and I can vouch for how busy you are because I did pop down. Was it last month? And I was at the door and I was forever in someone's way, like you're very very busy, which is awesome. So
Yeah,
well done. Like you've really built something up. Um, I just
thank
want to
you.
quickly acknowledge Doreen. Doreen says she's popping in for a like, but I'm busy. We'll check in on the replay. So thank you very much for joining us, Doreen. Hello, Natalie. Just popping in for a couple of minutes. Hello, Natalie. Um, what was I going to say? But you're what I'm so like impressed by, as well as, is just how much you do to kind of share everything that's going on, everything poetry, right? On your Instagram, like you're so tapped in to everything and you just promote so much. And I just, as a poet in the UK poetry scene, I just want to say thank you so much for all the effort
Thank
that you
you.
do to just get everything out there. It's really amazing, Ellie. It's really awesome.
Thank you.
Um, so let's talk about community. You're obviously very passionate about community. It's something that I'm very passionate about as well. I like to promote community in these streams. I have something called the Poetry Cove that I'm trying to make like the most extensive poetry community. So whether you're a performance poet, a page poet, or just someone looking for friends, I guess. So it's something
Mm.
I'm very passionate about as well. Uh, what do you think is the most important, like, why is community important, do you think? Because I find personally in all the sort of pies that I have my fingers in, right? Like editing magazines and kind of YouTube poets and influence, if you like, that I've contacted to try and kind of get on the channel and stuff.
Mm.
I kind of find a lot, not all, but there's a lot of poets out there that kind of don't want to know unless it benefits them. And that's something I kind of want to
Mm.
change. I think community is more important than the solo poet, right? Um,
Mm.
what are your thoughts on that?
So I think, well, first of all, everything you're doing is very cool.
Thank
And
you.
I'm really grateful to have met you and to be speaking here and, hopefully more moving forwards, because I think everything that you're putting out and the work you're putting in is really admirable and is a lot of work. And so, yeah, so thank you for all of the things that you are doing and all of the pies. It's great. It's really, really cool. Um, so sorry, I'm trying to remember the question.
I was just
Um,
yeah, what? Why do you think community is important, I guess? Why do you think
Yeah.
for me, it's almost like a mission to kind of just show people like the enjoyment of doing things with others, right? You don't have to do it on your own,
Mm,
and just having a sense of community about it. Because as I say, a lot of what I do is kind of getting in contact with others, and I've had it so many times where people really aren't that interested unless it's something for themselves. But I guess I
mm,
kind of look at other communities online, right, that I'm kind of interested in, and I see them all kind of collaborating and having a great time with each other, and at
mm.
least in maybe it's just me, Ellie. Maybe it's just people don't like me and they don't want to work with me. Maybe that's what it is. No.
Impossible.
Um, maybe you haven't had that experience. Maybe you haven't come across many poets that are kind of only in it for themselves. So yeah.
It's definitely about finding, in any community, it's about finding, like-minded individuals. One of the things that, that speaks to this a little bit as part of my facilitating of everything poetry night, I always, always, always pick um, names at random for the open mic. So, and recently, in the last year or so, I would say, um, there's been too many open mic names that not everyone gets called. That feels terrible as a host. I want everyone to read. I think everyone's voice deserves to be heard and needs to be heard. But there's something about I have to make it random. I have to make it because that's the only equal way I can think of doing it. That is not me throwing shade at any other night because different nights do things differently. And I think not every night has to be for everyone either. There has to be multiple poetry nights doing different things, even if it's like a slight difference. I think it's so important because that's how we, how we build community. And if there is someone who wants to go to an open mic night and really wants to perform for whatever reason, I think, yeah, fair enough, absolutely. At my night, it's a chance you might be able to, because for me, I think I go to poetry nights personally so that I can receive as much poetry as I can. And so it's always good to kind of, have a bit of humility in that sense. But I also understand the disappointment and the grief that can come with really wanting your voice to be heard and it not being heard. So I kind of have a patience and time for that too. I think your question also touches on a little bit what I spoke about at the start, which is like, none of us are made in a vacuum. When you ask me how many what's that? Is that a Kamala Harris quote that's been going around the internet recently? It's so annoying because it's so true. Like, like it's, none of us we are everything that came before us, and that's so true in poetry. Um, we are writing in response to other poets, whether we're aware of it or not. We are responding to everything around us as poets. Um, that it's always important to remember that, whilst also maintaining your own voice and your own, self, knowing it's within. It is, even if you are a page poet and you've never been to a poetry night before and you don't want to, you are still within that body of poets. You just are. So that's why community is important, because it's like, well, no, of course it is. Like, of course it's inevitable. Yeah.
Quite like that I quite like that there's a chance that you won't get to read everything because
Mm,
I've experienced, and we said this just before we went live. So I've spent the last 7 years online, and then this year is the year I'm kind of stepping out into the real world. So I have a very limited view of things in the real world, if you like. But
mm.
already in just a few months, I have kind of found a number of poets that kind of come to open mics, read their poem, and then will either leave or just talk through the rest of the night, or they kind of go to open mics with the mindset of I'm going to read my poem, and then not really bother about any other poets, right? So I think that's kind of a nice thing that you have, because at least then if you're going to everything, then you're going there to receive the poetry just as much as you are to kind
Mm.
of have your voice heard as well. Um, I quite like that.
Thank you. I mean, like I say, it's not. The one thing that I have really learned is that there is no perfect way to run a poetry night, because there's always pros and cons to every little decision, which is why when I say like I'm not trying to put down other nights, I really mean that, because there are things that other nights do. Like for example, Process Productions is a night that happens. The next one looks banging. I'm definitely going. The headliners are like incredible. So there's that. But they have a system where they do all of their tickets like before the show, so you have to buy them online. I do on the door, just a preference, but again, that's one of those choices that makes a big difference to people coming, but it's just different. Um, and they have a select number of early bird tickets where if you get that ticket, you are guaranteed an open mic slot. And then
Okay.
they also have a system where if you come along, and then there's a hat. So you can leave it up to chance and put your name in the hat. But the people that get the early tickets and are very committed and maybe a part of the they like to say the Process family, but part of that, they get to have that chance too. And I think that's a really good way of doing it, because like I say, I don't I don't think it's a bad thing to want to read your poem and to want to know that ahead of time, especially if we're talking about accessibility, and just knowing, okay, well, if I know I'm going to go, I know I'm going to perform, I can kind of mentally prepare for that, and a bunch of reasons, like I completely understand it. Um, so that's what I mean by, I really respect and value other nights and what they're doing. I don't think my way is the best way. It's just the way I do it. That's kind of it. It's the way that works for me. Um, and then there are other nights as well that, like the Poetry Hotel, which is a great night in Birmingham. They do kind of, at the moment anyway, like the first, when you arrive, you can sign up, and then once those slots are filled, they're filled. So it's kind of first come, first serve, which also I completely understand. So I think it just, and going into the night, I think people tend to be aware of what that framework is for signing up on an open mic. I've had a conversation with someone who said, I don't like it when poetry nights have a headliner or like a feature poet, because in my opinion, every poet is like equal and should be. And I'm like, I hear that. I get that. It's not how I do things, because I think I like to give poets an opportunity to get paid as well. Like, to be real, like the headliners, I pay my headliners. And it's also, for me anyway, I like there being, well, I know in poetry there are degrees of excellence and there are things that we can strive for. And many people, not, many people do poetry as a hobby. Many people do poetry as like an outlet, a creative outlet. Many poets do it professionally and want to take it really seriously and really make it into a career. I fall into that category. It's something that I, really want to build, and it's more than a hobby for me. And I feel like, because I respect that and want that for myself, that's why I kind of want to feature poets and have a headliner who is a poet that I respect and I look up to. And maybe other people in the audience will, maybe they won't. I'm also not necessarily saying they are better than open micers. It's just someone that I really value and really want to give the opportunity to. But I can see why other poets or other organisers of nights will be like, oh, that's a little bit too hierarchical. Completely understand that. But that's why I always come back to, it's so important for there to be multiple nights. And that is also why I promote so many other nights and so many other things on the Everything Poetry Night page, because I'm like, and I always say it on the mic as well, I'm like, go to other nights, be a part of this whole community. This night is just one piece of the massive tapestry. So, it's also about kind of making sure I'm staying humble. Even if the night is very successful, it's not the only night. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. I think that's going to be the theme. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It comes from a whole history of open mic nights in London, in Birmingham, and everywhere else that has, inspired me. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah, everyone has different tastes, right? And that's okay. That's what I always say. I haven't said it for this stream, but that's what I say for most streams. It's okay to have a different opinion, especially mine.
Yeah,
Just because it's my channel, it doesn't mean you can't have a different opinion to me. Just keep it respectful, right? Um,
exactly,
you did
exactly.
receive a few more hearts whilst you were talking about that, so I just thought I'd let you
That's
know. Thank you so much,
thank
whoever
you.
is tapping that heart. Yeah, so just kind of talking, you was talking about, you said something and it made me want to talk about uh Taylor Swift's new album, Tortured Poets Department. It's okay to have like different tastes, right? But what really has kind of bugged me about all of this, I'm not a massive Swiftie or anything, right? But some of the stuff that I'm reading online from big
Mm,
poets in our community and in our industry kind of makes me mad. Um, whatever your opinion is, I don't know. For a little bit about my background, so I haven't studied poetry formally, only,
mm,
self-taught. I actually used to skip poetry classes in school, which is ironic.
fair.
So I don't come from an academic background. I know that you do, so this might be a nice sort of quick
Yeah.
discussion kind of. For me, I mean, I recently posted a video actually about poetry criticism, and I was part of it for a little while. I was part of it, so I throw myself um into that basket where people were bringing out poetry books because it's
Mm,
been like a trend, right? And maybe the quality hasn't been that great, and people slated these poets for it, like really slate. And again, I have a video where I kind of slated it. I guess I won't, I was part of the problem, um, and I kind of stopped, and I thought to myself for a little while, a lot of people have come to poetry because of like social media and stuff, and if those
mm-hmm.
people are then watching Adam Gary poetry on YouTube saying this is total shit, stuff like that, then they may never come back to poetry again because they might think, oh,
Mm,
and I've just seen since Taylor Swift's album come out, I've seen a lot of big poets in our community and industry kind of being in my view, a little bit petty. Um, I saw one
mm,
post on LinkedIn that was just tearing Taylor Swift to shreds, and I kind of stopped myself and thought, well, you're a poet reviewing an album. It's not even like a fellow musician reviewing an album. I don't think Taylor Swift has released this album and said, "Look at me, I'm a poet." But
mm.
what are your thoughts on from a community point of view, right? We're we,
Yeah.
we're a community of poets. Yes, we may have different tastes, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about whether it's detrimental to our big wider community about how we can have different opinions, but how we express those opinions, I guess.
It's so interesting because I have so many thoughts on this, and
Sorry, I rambled a
I
little bit there.
no, no, no. It's all really good. It's all really good because I have so many opinions. Because I wrote an essay a few years ago about Rupi Kaur, and about how a lot of people don't like her. I am not a fan of Rupi Kaur's poetry. However, do I respect her as an artist, as a woman, as a POC woman making money and bringing people into poetry? Absolutely. So it doesn't even in this, for her as an example, I think, well, do you know what? If people like it, and if it's bringing people into poetry and making it more accessible, who cares if I don't like it? Do you know what I mean? Because I have the poets I like, and I'm going to buy their books and I'm going to read the books. And so, yeah, with that in mind, I'm not a Swiftie either. Um, I just, it's not my kind of music. Um, I see a lot of criticism on Taylor Swift coming from like a lot of men, and there has to be sexism in there somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And something about that makes me uncomfortable. all of the mediocre men that have written poetry and been really successful and left a legacy in history is astounding. So it's like, who cares if a woman is making an album and saying it's an anthology, and okay, like, I don't know. And if it's bringing, but I could get into the politics of all of that for weeks and weeks and weeks, not even days, like weeks. Because also Taylor Swift is problematic as well in her own way, and like there's no ethical billionaire, anyway, whatever. But that's another story. But just if we're just talking about her calling herself a poet or her using poet in her album, I listened to half the album, I was bored, I didn't like it. But I wasn't offended. I was like, you know what? Lovely. I love that. And it's a similar feeling that I have in response to Ruby Cool, where I'm like, this isn't for me, but maybe it wasn't written for me. Maybe it was never intended for me. Maybe, and that's fine. So I don't know. I haven't seen any of like the online discourse or of what poets are saying in response to Taylor's album, but I can imagine. You know what I mean? Like I can kind of imagine. I think it's just always important to remind ourselves, is this bringing people into poetry? Is this making poetry accessible? Are those bad things? Absolutely not. Like, so many poets come into it through button poetry, for example, which a lot of people have problems with and think is like lesser. I also think there's something a little bit elitist about it too. For a long time, spoken word poetry, and still isn't in many ways, is not regarded as equal to page poetry. It was only last year that the Forward Prize introduced an award for best spoken word performance. That's crazy, but it's because it's not regarded as highly as page poetry. And I just think, if I even think about that, it gets me upset, because I'm like,
I think that's gonna change
Yeah.
so quickly, though. I
I
really
hope
do.
so.
I think spoken word and performance poetry is gonna just keep going up and up and up, to be honest with you, especially in the sort of media-driven society that we live in now, right? Like social
Mm,
media
mm,
and YouTube
mm.
and all these festivals are doing film nights now. There was one at Verve, right? Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
um, yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on that. I think you absolutely smashed it. As I already
yeah.
said, it's okay to not like something, because I
Yeah.
obviously want to be very, very clear that I'm not saying that uh, bad bad stuff should be censored. I just think it needs to be
Mm,
phrased in a nicer way. Like I've just some of the things I've seen is just kind of disgusting. But uh,
mm.
so let me. We've got about 17 minutes left of the first half, and then the second half we're going to read some or hear some poetry from you. So
Yeah.
let me ask you, do you have any like standout moments where either you've just got really great memories from being part of the poetry community? I know that's a tough question just to pick one out on the spot, but I kind of honestly a memory that really sticks with me. Again, it's funny that you happen to be in London and stuff, because there is a memory of Verve that I have as clear as day in my mind. You was there with some friends, I think, possibly, and I just saw you guys like cuddling in the foyer, and I thought, oh, that must be nice. Billy No Mates over here. I was like, that must be nice. But
Oh.
yeah, do you have any like stand-up moments where the poetry community really kind of either got you through, or just some really great memories
Mm.
you have just to, you know, um, make me, what's the word? Wish I had friends? I don't know.
Don't be silly. Oh my goodness. Oh God. I'm trying to think. Um, I mean, yes is the short answer to that. Um,
You obviously have,
so
put it this way, you obviously have a very deep-rooted connection to Birmingham, right? So there must be a reason for that, because you still visit Birmingham. So
I do. I think so. The Birmingham poetry scene is a lot smaller than the London one, just because it's a smaller place. And it was hit really hard by the pandemic, the poetry scene. So a lot of nights kind of died. And now we're at a point now where new nights are kind of re-emerging. Oh, there are so many standout moments, or just sometimes it's like the little moments of like really lovely small things, like a poet recognizing and speaking to you. Like at Verve, for example, I had one of the volunteers who I didn't know, but they came up to me and they went, "Oh, can I just say, like, I'm a huge fan?" And I was like, that is really surreal, but also so, whew, like I just felt very seen in a really lovely way, and it was just gorgeous. And I came to find out that they submitted to an anthology that I'm putting together, and I was like, oh, but like we hadn't known each other before that, so that's a recent example of when I just felt very humbled and very grateful. Um, I think another time in in like poetry that really stands out to me was the first year birthday for everything. It was in November 23, and it was just amazing to look at how much the night had grown, how much like the night had become its own thing that's so much bigger and more important than myself. Um, and I had, one of my fave poets and mates, Jazz, come and do a set that people are still talking about now because it was so good. And just kind of enjoying that and really relishing in it and cherishing it. And then after the night, having a drink at a pub, and it's just really amazing. So those are definitely two recent moments, but there are so many countless things and times and little moments of seeing someone and being like, I see you and I hear you, and and you're not going to be best friends with everyone you meet in the scene. That's literally impossible. And I know that sometimes maybe as an outsider or someone who's kind of like entering or new, it might look like everyone's like buddy best friends. And of course it's true to an extent, but it's never, it always looks that way, but reality is very different. So
I
at
think
Verve, for example. Oh yeah, go
no,
on.
no, please carry on. Please carry on.
I was just gonna say, like at Verve, people come together who haven't seen each other in years, and then there are people who are like, "Oh, we met one time last week." It just really varies, and I love that expansiveness within a small community at the same time. Another recent example of, did you go to the very last event at Verve, which was Daljit Nagra was reading?
No, so I traveled back on the Sunday because I had work the
Oh,
Monday, so I
okay.
managed to catch the eco poetry one.
Oh
But
yeah.
I had to dash off straight away, and I actually ended up leaving behind two books, one of them being the eco poetry anthology. So I'm a bit gutted about that. But no, I didn't catch the last one.
So the very last event, it was great, and one of my lecturers from my undergrad was reading at it, and I haven't seen her probably in like 2 years, maybe. I'm not sure, because she went on sabbatical and she wrote a book, and it's great. Really, I need to buy it. And I spoke to her after. Her name's Dr. Isabel Gallimore, and I spoke to her afterwards, and it was so nice because she was like my dissertation supervisor and things like that. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, and how are you? Can I give you a hug?" And I was like, "This is kind of lovely." And yeah, yeah. So that's another recent example where I was just like, "Damn, like it is a small community, but also like time passes and life happens all the time. We don't see that necessarily, especially if you are in a space where you don't know that many people, maybe even no one. It looks like everyone's known each other for years, and sometimes it's true, but other times it's a lecturer that you haven't seen in 2 years. It just, but it's all really nice. So
I
that's what I wanted to
as
say.
someone who goes to Comic Con, what I love about Comic Con is you've got like your con friends that you don't see, as you say, you don't see throughout the year. But then con, you just know you meet up and it's like seeing old friends. And I think there's something to be
Mm.
said about just being there, like just being in the room, you kind of become part of that community, right? And I think with
Mhm.
poetry, perhaps especially because you're up there bearing your soul to everyone, and kind of people get to know you as a person through your poetry. So even just being in the room and being in that environment kind of makes you feel part of the community. Garage Poet says, I know I'm in the US, but I count you as my mate, Adam. Thank you so much, Garage. Thank you so much. I
Yes.
appreciate it. Um, so yeah, I think just because I think, not to speak for everyone, but to speak for myself, and I know a couple of my subscribers are similar, in the sense that we're introverted, right? So it's kind of hard to kind of get out and be amongst crowds and talk to strangers and stuff. And I'm kind of getting used to it now. I'm getting better the more I do it. But yeah, so poets, there is that stereotype of poets kind of being, and for a reason, I guess, because we spend a lot of time on our own, in our thoughts, in our emotions, at our desks and stuff. So it
Mhm.
is kind of difficult to then be in a much bigger, busier environment. So I think there's a lot to be said for just being there. I
Mm.
used to do with Through the Cove. It got a bit too expensive, so we don't do it anymore, which is a shame. But Through the Cove, we did virtual open mics. And so there's this thing called Second Life, which is like virtual reality. So you have your own avatar and you can speak through a microphone. It was really good. It was actually really good and
That's
quite,
really cool.
yeah, quite innovative. If you go to the poetrycove.com, it's still in the header. Click virtual calf and there's like a gallery and you'll see all of our different avatars and the sort of calf that I designed.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. That's
And
so cool.
we did them weekly. We did them weekly, and I never met these people in real life, and very much like these streams, for the most part, apart from Danny and Mitch, who's in the chat, I haven't met my subscribers in real life. But just the fact that we have this every week, like we build that community, and so when I
Mm.
think about like the people I haven't done Second Life for years because it got too expensive. But I kind of think about them every now and then. I wonder what they're up to, so wherever they are around the world, and there's good
Yeah,
memories. I know it might sound odd because it's virtual reality, but I got good memories, and so I think just being there goes a long way. Goes a long way in building a community or being part of a community.
definitely. Definitely. And I think that's really lovely. I've never heard of poetry being like shared in that way before. That's really lovely because there's something great. Yeah, I think there's a lot of introverted poets. Most poets are introverted. Um, and so that's nice to kind of have that freedom to kind of, not everyone wants to go up on a mic in real life. That's kind of terrifying actually. Having that degree of separation is really important, and yeah, that's just amazing. I've never heard of something like that before. It's great.
It was
And
good
there was a
fun.
lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds wicked. Because that's the thing about being a poet. It's quite horrifying to feel perceived. It's lovely and it's horrifying. It's how I feel about this pamphlet I have coming out. I'm like, oh no, I don't. No, this is so real in a kind of, which I know is like, oh boo hoo, poor me, I'm getting published. But at the same time, it's like, oh no, but once it's out there, it's there. And I think there's also a tendency of, like the poetic eye, the eye in the poem, people conflate, the poet and the speaker in the poem, which makes sense because it's immediate, it's, first person, but sometimes that can be a bit too revealing and sometimes not necessarily true. Anyway, it's a complicated thing because then there's that push for authenticity in poetry, and you have to speak from experience and, like, in many ways, but that's another conversation, I think. But
Well, I think that's a perfect way to set up part two. So why don't we take we've almost bang on time as well. We got 6 minutes. Why don't we take a 5 minute break, and then when we come back,
okay.
we will talk more about Rein It In.
Yes, I'm gonna go make a cuppa. But yeah,
I'm
thank
gonna
you
go
for this. It's
make a
been great.
coffee. Let me just quickly catch up on the chat. It's a little bit smaller on my screen because I'm watching you through OBS because I like to see you in real time. So it's like actually having a conversation, but it's a bit small. So let me go over to YouTube real quick and catch up on the chat. I'm from US as well. We've been dear friends for a long time. Absolutely, Tanya. I love writing. I love our letters correspondence. Yoda says, I need community to stop treading a narcissistic path. Oh, well, hopefully you find your community here with us. I know you've been very active, Yoda, over on the Cove, especially with GlopoRimo. By the way, do you call it NaPoWriMo or GlopoRimo?
I call it NaPoWriMo.
Yeah. So I started with that at the start of the month, and then I was like, hang on a minute. It's more of a global thing now. And so someone told me that they have actually changed it to GlopoRimo. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, I think
Yeah, that is better.
that makes more sense because I think it's an international thing at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
Danny and Mitch
No, that makes
says,
sense.
I mean, you didn't have much of a choice meeting Mitch. No, I didn't. Mitch is an old work colleague of mine. We used to work security at Chesington. Tanya says,
Oh,
Yoda,
nice.
this is a great community. It absolutely is because you guys are awesome. Okay, cool. All right then, guys, let's take 5 minutes, go and brew a coffee, and then when we come back, Ellie's going to read some poetry for us.
Ooh, okay, cool.
Awesome.
See you soon.
Catch you in 5, guys. Not the burgers. Okay, we are back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Now, Ellie was just saying something really, really awesome. I had to stop her because I think you guys will appreciate uh, what was being said. Let me just catch up on the chat. How are you feeling, Em? Notice you have posted poems on other media as well as Cove. I'm so impressed. Yes. Herb, you are a machine with your Glopo Rimo. You're doing awesome. As are you, Yoda. So keep up the good work, guys. I post here and there. It's been a long month of poetry. Yeah, it's definitely a marathon and not a sprint. Have you been taking part, Ellie? Okay, you did you did more than me. I got three. I got 3 days in, and I tripped and stumbled and didn't get back up. But Herb and Yoda have been doing amazing stuff over on the forum. So well done, guys. Do you just want to do you just want to say what you were saying before we went live about like how the of course for us we kind of get locked into the UK scene and the London scene because that's where we are naturally. But a lot of my subscribers are from the US, and you were saying something really great about how the poetry community is a worldwide community. Do you just want to continue saying what you were saying?
With people all over the world and poets all over the world is amazing. So I think those, whilst we're obviously speaking a lot about, the things that I do, it's situated in a specific physical location, which has its downsides. There's a limit to that. So I'm really excited that there are people watching the stream, tapping in poets from everywhere, kind of engaging, and I'm just really excited to moving forwards, like engage with more poets internationally as well, like on my Instagram and my socials, because it's great and there's so much, there's just so much. Slam poetry started in the US anyway. It's yeah.
I'll leave links for your socials. I'll leave them in a pinned comment down below so people can find you on Instagram and stuff. For
That would
those of
be
you
great.
who had lost audio for the start of that, we were just talking about how Ellie was recognizing that, the poetry community is a global thing. Um, some of the people in the chat are just saying that they lost audio for the first part of that, but yeah, just to
Okay.
summarize, we were just talking about recognizing that community is a global thing and not just necessarily a regional thing. Um,
Hmm.
so Ellie, you have a new pamphlet. Rein it in. Do you want to tell us everything about it? All about it?
So this was actually my master's dissertation. After I completed it, I just threw it out to a few publishers, and I was very grateful to have Broken Sleep Books accept it, which is excellent.
Can we
Broken
just
Sleep
get
have
a
been
round of
doing.
applause in the chat, guys?
Thank
Sorry, carry
you.
on.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's kind of changed a lot since first submission, but I'm really happy with where it is and so excited for it to be in the world. Really, it's very exciting, and then it won't be my baby anymore. It will be independent and doing its own thing, which is very frightening, but also very exciting at the same time.
That is awesome. Before we move on, I just want to say to the guys, we got some round of applause in the chat. Thank you so much, Danny and Mitch. If
Thank
you guys
you.
have any questions for Ellie for like the second half of part two, if you will, put them in the chat and we'll come back to some questions from you guys. But Ellie, I'm assuming that you've worked with an editor on this pamphlet.
Yeah, so the way it worked is I submitted it to Broken Sleep, but before I submitted it, that's when most of the editing was done, to be honest. So I had amazing feedback from Matt Sowerby, Francis Xavier Machibi, and George Tooley. Those are three poets that really shaped the pamphlet into what it is now. Um, really, really helped me out a lot. And then after submission, it was edited by like the person who runs Broken Sleep, who is a fantastic editor and poet named Aaron Kent. But his editing style was he was very off, like he kind of let the work be what it is, which was really very, very lovely of him. So he did a lot of micro edits, but really kind of let the work rest and be exactly how it is. So yeah, I definitely worked with several editors and people who helped.
How did you find that relationship? Because I know that there's a few subscribers who aren't here tonight, but I'm assuming they'll watch on playback who are gearing up for their first publication and submissions and stuff like that. So, how did you find working with an editor and the process overall?
Overall, it's been really positive for me. He's, Aaron is a very kind and generous editor. When it was accepted for submission in February 2023. It's been actually quite a long time, but the publication date was set for the 31st of May 2024. It's quite a lot of time, and during that time, I actually wrote better poems than were in the manuscript that I just thought would suit the work better. And he was very generous in allowing me to change some of the poems in the manuscript, which, yeah, like I say, was just incredibly generous and kind of him, because I would completely understand if an editor were to be like, you know what, that's not the manuscript we accepted. The work is then it becomes not yours anymore in some ways, which is as it should be, I believe, to an extent, in death of the author. Um, but he was very sweet and kind and allowed me to make it into what I wanted it to be, which, as this is my first time being published, I was very grateful for. So yeah, very positive experience.
And are there recurring themes? How did you come up with the title Rein It In? Tell us all, Ellie. Tell us all.
It's just
If you
so funny
can,
because
if you
my
can. I don't know if you've signed an NDA or anything like that, actually.
no, I will. It's very funny. This manuscript looked very different at the very beginning, when it was just a master's. I say just when it was a master's dissertation. It kind of tackled themes of my relationship with alcohol. It's always been complicated. Um, Not an alcoholic. I don't struggle with alcoholism, but I have definitely had complicated feelings and dependency with it. And so it was really a pamphlet it was inspired by that. But then I went through a pretty major breakup, and that changed and reshaped the. I was with my ex for a good 3.5 years, um, and so when that happened, it really, I don't know, it just changed. It changed the pamphlet into what it is, and called it Rein It In because of someone once told me that I should rein it in and kind of like, be less of myself. And so this is a bit of an fu to that, to be honest. To be like, do you know what, I'm not going to rein it in, and here are loads of really confessional um, poems, and a lot of them are uncomfortable, and it's reveling in that, and yeah, taking joy out of that.
Love it. With that being said, could you possibly read your first poem for us tonight? Right.
Sure.
I'm going to
Thinking about
mute
which
my
one to
mic,
start.
so it's all over to you.
Okay, I'm going to start with this one. I don't think I've ever read this out loud. And it's the second poem in the pamphlet. It's called The Girls. This is for the ugly girls, the bloated girls, the girls who vape, the girls who have vaped so many watermelon Lost Marys on nights out that now watermelon makes them nauseous, the girls who pay for their drinks, the girls who refuse to pay for their drinks, the girls who delete and then immediately re-download Tinder, the girls who aren't sure if they are girls, the girls who are questioning, citalopram girls, the sertraline girls, the girls who love girls, the girls who cut their hair, the girls who aren't OnlyFans, the girls who are making bank, the girls whose cards have been declined for Tesco meal deals, the girls who love being girls but sometimes hate what it means, the girls who get called girls by men at work, the girls who give away pads and tampons as freely as compliments, the girls who pretend to know other girls when they see danger, the girls who grit their teeth, the girls who grip their keys, the girls who have ever felt uncomfortable, the girls who are trying, the girls who are trying even though they don't want to, the girls who give up, the girls who are here, the girls who are here listening right now. I love you. I love you specifically. I love girls. I love you so much. So that is my first poem for the girls.
Ooh,
Really.
thank you very much, Ellie. You've Tanya's given you a round of applause in the chat as well. Thank you so much. Ellie, do you have a writing process? Do you have like a ritual? For me, as I said earlier, I cannot write outside of this shed. If I do anything outside of this shed, it just feels wrong. Do you have like a ritual or a writing process that you can tell us about?
Not at the moment. No, they kind of change. I am very lucky to have a kind of my spare room in my flat, which is now building into a kind of poetry space, really. So that's kind of the place. I'm trying to formalize a writing routine and a writing ritual. Um, but I do a lot of, you know, writing on trains, on buses, when I'm on my way to places. But yeah, in terms of ritual, it's a lot of free writing and then kind of whittling down from that free write, really. And seeing. Sometimes I use prompts, sometimes I take a line from another poem and then use that as a starting point. So I try a lot of different things.
Nice. I think there's something important about having a space for writing at home. I used to always work in my room, and I could never shut
Mm,
off. Hence why I got a garden shed and turned it into this sort of little space for me to kind of work and create and stuff like that.
nice.
Nikki has just joined us. Hello, Nikki. Nikki is our stream historian. She knows everything about anything when it comes to history, so I
Wow.
can always um turn to Nikki. Nikki is actually the subscriber I had in mind when I was talking about like the process of working with an editor and stuff, because I know, Nikki, you're kind of
Oh, cool.
editing your first manuscript at the moment. So do check out the playback for that,
Cool.
Nikki. Sorry you missed that. It was only 10 minutes ago as well, so I apologize. But yeah, Ellie, how about a second poem if that's okay?
Yeah, I'm just having a little look. Also, congratulations on to Nikki for having working on the manuscript. That's really exciting. Um,
Whilst you look
okay.
for a poem, unfortunately, Nikki did have a bit of a headache. So, warning to all poets out there who uses Google Drive.
Mm.
Um, oh, hang on, my laptop's trying to restart. No, thank you. I'm in the middle of something. Uh, Unfortunately, Nikki's Google Drive got wiped clean after
Oh,
putting the manuscript together. Nikki, did you manage to get that back, or yeah, I know luckily Nikki did print off her first manuscript, so it wasn't all
oh,
gone. But sorry I'm late. I'm huddled in a corner in the hospital right now. Ah, sorry about that, Nikki. I know you do have a lot going on, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. I'll check the playback, no problem. Okay, Ellie, I'm going to mute my mic again and throw it over to you.
thank you. This next poem is called Thirst Trap. A boy is spitting at me. He is following me down the road, and I keep walking, I keep walking, I keep walking. And a friend of a friend of a friend is not letting my hand go. Maria is punching another guy in the face, but little does the spit boy know, spitting is my kink. So salivate on me, baby, it's a win-win, especially hate spit. especially anti-women spit, especially spit from a boy who thinks it's so nice. It feels so good. Like, did he know that spit is 99% water? How did he know I was thirsty? So thirsty. So insatiably thirsty.
Round of applause in the chat, please, guys. Thank you so much, Ellie. I hope that wasn't inspired by true events. I hope someone wasn't spitting at you. I hope
So
someone wasn't.
unfortunately, it was inspired by true events. But a thing about that poem and why I wanted to share it was kind of like taking something that's really nasty that happens and then twisting it to be like, "Do you know what? You made me uncomfortable, so I'm going to make the perpetrator of this thing uncomfortable." So it was kind of a reclamation of that. My mom hates that. My mom hates that poem. And literally, when the manuscript was final, and she said, "Oh my god." Actually, it was more like this. Ellie, my mom's Scottish. She was like, "Ellie, I really hope that horrible poem isn't in there." And I was like, I'm so sorry. So yeah, but I like the poem. I think it's good to reclaim things, especially acts of misogyny, and to be like, do you know what? It's like catcalling the catcaller almost, or yeah, it's like I'm going to make you really uncomfortable. So that's why that poem is important to me.
I love that. I love Scottish accents as well. I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, when you were selecting your poems, um, did you ever? You say your mum doesn't like that poem. Do you ever think about whilst putting that together? Oh no, can I put this in here because so and so might read it? Is that ever a thought?
No,
No.
you can't do that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just if you're censoring yourself for anyone, it's just obviously there's a way of being respectful. So there are a couple of poems in this pamphlet that are named after real people and are about that person. And I asked for consent before doing that because it's one thing having a poem about someone where they're not named, but because we all need to write our truth and write about our experiences. But there's a duty of care as well, I feel. But if there's a poem that you just think someone might not like, it might not be their cup of tea, sorry, like, just don't read it. Like, and I feel very strongly about that because
Yeah.
you can't censor yourself in that way.
Could you imagine how many poems that wouldn't have gone out in the world if that was the case? It's yeah,
Exactly.
it might be tough for some people, but I totally agree with you. Try not to censor yourself like that.
No, no, definitely. Yeah.
Um, yes, guys, don't forget if you have any questions for Ellie, do put them in the chat, and I'll scroll back up and get to that. Do you have maybe one more? Can you do three? Do you have one more? I'm not sure if you. Yeah, shall we do one more?
Yes, yeah.
Perfect.
Yes, I would love to end on a poem called Camberwell Green, which is where I was born and raised. A man is helping his sorry, let's start again, lol. A man is helping his wife readjust her coat before he takes her by the arm. He doesn't need to say he loves her for me to hear it from the other side of the park. They are as small as the last dregs of our first pints together, warmed by the buzz of hormones and beer, overlooking SE5 from the Fox on the Hill. The couple have now stopped in the middle of the Burgess Park Bridge. They take in the muggy sky and council estates smiling across this skyline. One day, we might be them. But for now, meet me at the Green in an hour. We'll get wraps from the best falafel shop, find a patch of grass that isn't studded with cigarette butts and broken bottle glass, take in the scent of really cheap weed. And I will tell you that this is the Green of first kisses, of after school Morleys, of I'll be home soon texts to mums, of interweaving the fabrics of different upbringings. When it gets dark, Maybe we'll go back to our first date pub. Maybe we'll stumble out and you'll readjust my coat, take me by the arm, and walk me home.
Oh, thank you. Round of applause in the chat, please, guys. Nostalgia is a big thing for me, and kind of thinking back on like early life and stuff. It's a big thing for me right now. So um I really enjoy stuff like that. So I'm glad we ended on that. That was such a nice one to end on. Do you just quickly
Thank
want to
you.
tell people where they can grab Rain It In and where from, and then we'll just have some conversation, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, so Rain It In is currently available for pre-order at Broken Sleep Books, which is a great independent poetry press. So yeah, you can find it on the website there at Broken Sleep Books. And it's going to be actually, released and in the world on the 31st of May, which is really exciting. But that's where you can find it.
Oh, we're getting close, getting
I
close.
know, really
I can't
weird.
wait for you. I can't wait for you to hold it in your hand for the first time. I'm sure you'll post on Instagram about it. I look forward to seeing that post. Um,
Definitely.
Let me just quickly catch up on the chat. I know. So we have this thing in the chat. I don't know if you have the chat open on your phone or something, but I use this thing called Nightbot, which is basically a bot that kind of just reminds people to hit like and stuff like that. And the
Mhm.
first the first night we used it a couple of weeks ago, it had a setting that I forgot to take it off. Uh, and basically put Nikki in a timeout for using capital letters. So it's a running joke now that there's, some sort of rivalry going on with Nikki and Nightbot, and Nightbot is using capital letters tonight, and Nikki says Nightbot using caps, the hypocrisy. Plenty of
Terrible.
Yeah, right. Plenty of round of applause for you, Ellie. Yoda says loved the poems.
Ah, thank you. That's very sweet.
So, Ellie, as a host of a very successful open mic, what are your sort of tips if someone hasn't done an open mic before and is looking to do
Mm.
one soon? What are your sort of top three tips, if you don't mind? I know it's difficult off the
Ooh.
top of your head, but
Tips in terms of to perform on an open mic
um, and
or an
etiquette in
attendee.
general. Yeah, etiquette in general, I guess.
Okay, cool. I think uh, best poetry etiquette is if you like a poet that you hear on the open mic or as one of the headliners, tell them. I think that's a really big thing because we're all insecure and we all struggle, and that's why we write, to be honest. Um, so to have and that's also how community is built is people encouraging each other and supporting each other. So it's not even etiquette necessarily, it's just like a nice thing to do is if you want to get involved in the scene and you want to make friends and connections through it, like, going up to someone that, if you intent really liked their poem or something in it, to tell them is a big, big thing. I think also one of my biggest pet peeves at poetry nights is when an open micer gets on the mic and is apologetic about the poem that they're sharing. They'll go, oh, like this isn't really good, or this, oh, I can't follow the person who just came before me. Like, oh, I hate that because you don't have to believe it's like the best thing in the world. And I don't expect that of any of us, but you deserve to have your voice heard and be heard. And you getting on the stage, you clearly believe that as well. At least a little bit of you does to have, the courage to get on the stage. So never apologize for your poem. Never be self-deprecating. And I know that a lot of us like are naturally self-deprecating, but just don't be. um,
I can kind of understand that. How do I follow that? I think that's more of a just sort of a deflection kind of thing. But I do agree
yeah.
with the when I've been to open mics and someone's going, um, so this is my poem. I wrote it a month ago and it's shit, but whatever. Like, you can't say that, man. You can't say that. Don't
It
say
doesn't
that.
make me want to listen to it. I don't want
Right?
to listen
Yeah.
to it. Like Yeah, so no, absolutely. I mean, there's little, I say it's a pet peeve, but that's a very loaded term. It's just something I wish I could see less of because it's like, come on, just have a little bit of self belief. Like, just a little. It's fine. It can be fake. You can be, you might think it's rubbish. Don't tell us. Because also, like, if someone else hears it and it really resonates with them, that's valuable. And that you have to put value on that because, yeah, so that's another big. And then another tip would be, um, would be do try and be as present as possible.
Hmm.
Try and be in the moment, especially if your name is in a hat or on a list to perform. It's really nerve wracking, and we all get in our heads, no matter how many times someone might read, if it's their first time or their 50th time, you're always thinking, okay, what am I going to read? Like, is it going to be good? Should I do this? Oh, I'm not sure. Try as much as you can to be present because it will help you and it will make you enjoy yourself a lot more as
Hmm.
well. So those are my tips.
I agree. I agree. How Delgado says, how worried and stressed when you did your first event in the pub about people turning up?
Oh, that's a great question. I was so nervous. I was so nervous. I think, do you know what is actually more nerve wracking is the second one? Because on the very first one, I was very lucky to have family and friends who are not necessarily poets, but are coming to just support me to be like, oh, that's sweet. Ellie's doing something new. Let's go and support. They're not going to come to the second one. So that's when it gets real. That's when it's, oh no. There's always an element of nervousness with that. The first one, because so many friends and family pulled through, and because I had loads of people telling me ahead of time, I can't wait. I had an idea, but also, so I was very, very nervous. But I also just had to always remind myself, it's like, you know what, this is an experiment. We're just trying this out and try and let go of my ego as much as I possibly could. Because I was like, how can I not be offended if no one comes? But it's like, well, why am I doing this? And trying to remind myself of that as best as possible. So I was nervous, but I was also a little bit, I was also confident too, because I've been to other nights, and when starting a new night, it's important to engage with what's already going on, to be like, cool, I see you, I respect you, and then you go to each other's nights as well. But obviously I was nervous, but especially for the second one. The second one was where I was like, oh my
That
God.
that
And
that worries me a little bit, Ellie, because I think you shared it on everything
mm,
actually. I'm starting one next month and I'm crapping it. I'm not
woo.
Thank you. I'm crapping it, but not so much. I'm not so worried about like not having the lineup because I will. What I'm thinking of doing is just kind of adopting a karaoke kind of approach in the sense that I'll have like a couple anthologies available, and then if people kind of want to read a poem from there, what I'm really worried about is if no one turns up. Again, if no one turns up to read, that's fine. I'll read for 2.5 hours, whatever it is, what it is. But the venue have been really
Yeah.
accommodating, similar to what you said. Like, as long as they make money behind the bar, they're not going to charge anything. So I'm kind of just worried.
Mm,
Like, I'm more concerned about having people in the audience so that the venue doesn't lose money because of me than
mm,
whether or not I have poets turn up, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm kind of bricking it a little bit. But let me
mm.
just catch up on the chat a bit more. I don't want to give too. Danny and Mitch says I don't want to give too much away, but me and Mitch went to our first open mic as guests last week, and the atmosphere and support for the poets was so amazing. Yeah, so that was in
Oh,
Kingston actually. That's Homely Poetry in Kingston, and I know that because I was there and
oh yeah.
I read. And Danny has actually recorded it. I'm going to put that as a video next week. So thank you, Danny, for recording that. Nikki
Wicked.
says that's people's anxiety kicking in. I think that's for the this is shit kind of thing. I understand that it's like anxiety and
Yeah.
it's people trying to comfort themselves and as you say, Ellie, like say it before someone else kind of does. But I
Mm,
don't think you should say it because you are what your thoughts are, and if you say it's shit, then you're going to convince
Mm.
yourself that it's shit. So try to stay away
Yeah,
from that, guys, is what I would say.
I think, you're absolutely right. Um, that it is anxiety speaking, and as someone who suffers from anxiety, I relate to it. And so when I say it's like a pet peeve, I mean that with a lot of love. I mean that of like, no, you are valid, even if you don't believe it right now. Please, like, take up space. So it's more an invitation to allow yourself to take up space as opposed to being like, "Rrr." Don't expect everyone to, think that they are best poet ever. That's problematic in its own way. But just to know, you know what, I deserve to be here. I deserve to be heard. That's kind of where I'm coming from on that front. But yeah, because anxiety is a real, like, it's
Mm.
terrible. It's terrible. So yeah, it's
And
definitely coming
just
from that place.
um and just keep in mind, guys, you are what you say and what you think. So
Mm.
if you say, maybe don't, as Ellie says, maybe don't go up to the open mic and go, thanks guys, I'm a bit like Tenacious D, I'm about to read the best poem in the world. Don't think that, but don't say it. But you know what I mean. Don't say it because you'll
Mm.
convince yourself that it's true. Um, Thanks for the tips on deprecation from Yoda. They're scared people think that, so they say it first, so it won't cut so deep. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But try not to convince yourself of that, guys.
Mm.
Uh, Yoda says, "Do people not writing poetry go to open mics in London?" I'll let you answer that one because
Yes.
I'm not qualified to answer that.
Yeah, and actually, this is something I speak about a little bit when I'm hosting. Is that I always try and at the end of the night thank the people who come to support and are not there to perform themselves, because I think that's a huge, huge thing. It's a really interesting space that there's a huge overlap between enjoyers of poetry and poets,
Mm.
but it's not a circle, it's a Venn diagram at the end of the day. And I think, there are people who come to everything poetry night who are never, ever, ever going to sign up on the open mic. And that's not why they're there. They're just there to take it in. And yeah. So basically, yes, absolutely. And I love those people. They are extremely valid, and they are very important in the community as well. Yeah. So big, big, big yes to that.
Yeah, and huge shout out to those people. Thank you so much for coming just to enjoy the poetry, right? That's, as you say, that's a big thing for people to do. So, if that's you and you're watching, thank you so much. Um, Mythical Meter says, "Good credo, Ellie." Danny and Mitch says, "Adam, when and where is the open mic that you've set up again?" So it is May 14th at the Thameside Brewery in Staines, and Nano, who is a subscriber, will be there in the audience too, Danny and Mitch. So maybe you guys can link up if you're thinking of coming. So that would be awesome. Ellie, so back to community, I guess, and it's kind of going to be another annoying question, I'm afraid. Uh, if if someone is watching this, a lot of people come to me and send me messages and thank me for like the YouTube channel and the Poetry Cove because they are into poetry, they write poetry, but they don't know where to share it, or they want to get to know people who are also in the poetry community, right? So I know that there are a lot of subscribers out there that are feeling like that. So if someone wants to kind of slowly integrate with a poetry community, whether that's regional or online or however they want to do it. What do you suggest? I know it's
Oh,
another
I
bad
think
question, but it's all I got, Ellie. I'm sorry.
it's a great question, just so many answers. But I think the first step is like going to the open mic, I would say, to engage. It depends on, what you mean by engagement, if it means meeting and connecting with people, because there's so many things that you can do online and that are very valuable. But if there are, people watching who are like, actually, I want to go to a night, but maybe I'm a bit nervous, maybe none of my friends are poets. So I think just going to an open mic and putting yourself in there. And you don't have to perform either. Even if you are a poet and at some point you want to perform, there are many people that take a few times at different poetry nights, maybe the same one, before they put their name in or put their name on the list. And that's because you want to scope out and get to know people, want to know if it's a safe space as well, especially when so much poetry is so vulnerable. So I think going to the night, and I think as well, if anyone who's watching is UK based, actually, unfortunately, more London based, there is an amazing resource run by an amazing poet named Fiona. Um, she has an Instagram page dedicated to promoting every single night that is happening in London, which is insane because there are so many things all the time. So I'd really recommend that as a resource if you are London based, called Where the Word Things Live. It's great. But it just if you want to see what nights are going on in the city. But I just think, yeah, go to one open mic, just see how you feel. Check in with yourself afterwards and think, okay, what did I take from that? How did I feel? Did I feel comfortable? Who did I speak to? And Rome isn't built in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day. Slowly, surely feel your way through, and you might go to a night that isn't up your street and you don't like. That's completely fine. That's why multiple nights exist. And so checking in, and if you turns out if you make one friend at one poetry night, they're probably going to be interested in going to another one, and then that's kind of how you can build from there as well. So I'd say that, but more online stuff, just engaging with poets online is really amazing and is really cannot be bears repeating how great it is to be able to access each other's work and talk about poetry online is huge. So, get following the poets that you admire. I also really recommend listening to poetry podcasts. That's another thing. Obviously, that's there's less engagement on that, but that's personally exposed me to a lot of poets that I wouldn't have read otherwise, that I wouldn't have heard of necessarily. So I really recommend the Faber Poetry podcast, Process Productions podcast. There's loads out there, but hearing people talk about poetry is really nice, and then that's when I guess you will be able to find them online and then reach out and say, I listened to your episode on this podcast and it really resonated with me. Doing things like that, why not go for it? Is what I would say.
For me, if I was to ask myself that question, another thing for me, I think I already said that it kind of tails off of just being in the room that I said earlier. For me, being the introvert and I know you wouldn't believe it because I do. Behind a camera, I'm completely fine, but in person, I'm so socially awkward and I just freeze up and don't really know what to say or do. I think for me, what's kind of helped me is just being persistent in being in the room. Being persistent of being in the room. Just keep being in the room, and eventually someone might recognize you from the week before and say, oh hey, or oh, I saw you at another event. And it might, some people have a gift, a social gift where they can just talk to anyone at any time and make friends with everyone. But for me, the key has been just keep going, going, keep being in the room, smile. It might be an awkward smile, and some people might think, oh, what a weird. But some people might be like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And you just get talking. And there are friendly people out there, guys. There have been people that, when I come back from Verve, I went to. Have you been to the Poetry Lounge in Highgate?
No, but I know the organizer.
Yes.
Who's super lovely.
Yeah, so that was my first
Yeah.
one, and there was some folks that just kind of recognized that I was there on my own and happily kind of started talking to me and stuff. So they were actually at everything that night as well, that I popped down. They were there. So you do see people at other nights as well. So if you're one of the people watching this and you've kind of got a bit of social anxiety like me and you've been to one and it didn't kind of there wasn't fireworks and it wasn't the most amazing thing, don't worry, just go again. And if the second
Yes.
time you still don't get talking to people, it's okay, go again.
Yeah.
Go a third time, get your face seen at those places, and eventually you will also hosts like yourself are amazing. So that, you know, I've never been to, actually I think I've been to one, but we won't talk about that. Most of the time, most of the ones I've been to, all the hosts have been accommodating, have smiled, have said hello, have made you
Mm,
feel comfortable, you know. So um
mm.
yeah, if you're one of those people that are kind of really desperate to get out into the real world but are panicked by it, don't be. Just show up, just be in the room and be
Yes,
persistent with it.
yes,
Let me just
absolutely.
catch up with the chat because I've seen a few people putting stuff in there. Yoda, me and Mitch don't particularly write, and we try to support as much as as we know how challenging writing and reading can be. Yes, thank you so much, Danny and Mitch. You're one of those amazing people that are there to just soak it up. And as poets, we appreciate that. We appreciate that.
Hmm.
Dazzle in the
Definitely.
Dark. Oh, by the way, Dazzle in the Dark, thank you so much for becoming a channel member. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Adam, did you say 14th of May? As I thought I heard it was the 13th, which is a Monday. So I have two events going on. Monday the 13th is what I'm calling the Poetry Hub, which is basically just like a coffee morning in a library, and we'll do like writing activities, we'll discuss, we'll just socialize. It's just kind of like a Monday morning thing. That'll be um the 13th from 10 a.m. till noon, and then the open mic is the next day, is the Tuesday at the 14th, doors at 6, and then we start at 6:45. Thank you, Dazzle in the Dark. Yoda says, Danny, that is great. It is so important to connect with the general public. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you guys have any questions for Ellie, please do pop them in the chat because now I am completely freestyling. We have 15 minutes left. Yeah, so do you have any sort of standout memories from I know I said about community, but what about tell us about the first time you performed at an open mic actually. How was that for you?
Ah, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anyone. But I am a very extroverted person, very naturally. So I haven't necessarily experienced too much. I'm just not introverted. That's the thing. I was a drama kid at school. It's quite obvious in my opinion. Like I'm just, so for me, it wasn't. I didn't struggle so much with that side of things, but there's still obviously it's still nerve wracking, especially when it's your first time and it's maybe one of the first poems you even ever written. So yeah, definitely nerve wracking. I found it helpful. I think maybe one of the first ones I went to was completely random. I didn't know anyone there. It's before I was at uni. I was like maybe 19 or something, and I went with a friend, and I didn't know anyone there, and I performed my poem, and then that was it, and I kind of left. And I didn't follow up with anything afterwards, or I just don't know. I didn't know any of the etiquette. I didn't know about the poetry community at all. So my first time at an open mic was random, I would say. Um, yeah, random, unplanned, didn't know anything. And then I came back to it when I was in Birmingham and went to Grizzly Pear for the first time. And then that was when I was like, oh, now I see like the network and the community. But as an outsider and still looking in and thinking, oh, okay. And if I will always say this, even though I'm an extroverted person, looking from the outside in and being like, I kind of want to engage in this, but I'm not sure how. Like everyone looks a lot closer and like than they actually are. Do you know what I mean? Like that's just true. And I know that, and everyone, it's to me, it's the same thing as, I don't know if you experience this, but sometimes when I hear two people speaking a language that I don't know, I'm like, they sound like besties. Like they sound so familiar. But it's actually just because they're speaking a language I don't know. And that's it. And that's kind of how I feel about entering a space like that. When you see something that you're not part of yet, um, it looks kind of impenetrable in many
Mm.
ways, but it's not. That's not true. It's not.
I
Yeah,
used
so I'd say
to
that as well.
I used to do drama as well, and I miss that environment, you know, in rehearsals
Mm,
and kind of everyone bouncing off the walls almost. I was more extroverted in those days. I guess it's because I spend more time at a desk on my own. Maybe that's what happened, or life just happened. I don't
Mm.
know. Tanya says, "Thank you for a wonderful afternoon. Must go. Have an amazing rest of the day or evening." Thank you so much for stopping by, Tanya, and see you soon. We will be wrapping
Thank
up
you.
shortly. Mythical Meter says, "Thank you for supporting poets." Uh, uh, Yoda says, "Danny, that is great. It is so important to connect." Oh, yeah, I've read that one out already. Yeah, do you know what? It's been a funny couple of weeks. So I did homely poetry in Kingston last week, and the first time I
Mhm.
ever read a poem out loud, I was at Kingston, the Rose Theatre in Kingston, and I was rehearsing.
Um,
What was it? I think it was Midsummer. I think it was Midsummer. I was rehearsing Midsummer at the Rose in the room upstairs, and then the director said, "Oh, they're doing a poetry evening in the bar in a couple of weeks. Does anyone want to read poetry?" And at this point, I had never really decided to pursue poetry, but I certainly had one or two
mm.
sort of locked away somewhere. So I don't know what possessed me. Just confidence. I was more confident back in those days, I guess. And I was like, "Hey, I'm happy to read a poem, but can I read one of my own?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's great."
Nice.
And then it come to the the day of performing it, and thing with acting, right? It's someone else's words you can hide behind, and you've rehearsed them so many times. But this was the first. I was only 21 or thereabouts, and this was the first time ever reading one of my poems. And oh my God, my knees were buckling, my hands were shaking. I don't even know how I got through it. I don't even know how I finished it.
Mm.
So it was kind of a full circle moment to then be back in Kingston reading poetry for the
Mm.
first time since then, and it went a lot better. So it was a full circle moment.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's really lovely.
Uh, Danny and Mitch says, "Mythical Meter, always. We have both written a poem each. Without Adam, we probably wouldn't have come across open mics or anything like that. And that's why I have this channel. I love introducing people to poetry. And I'm glad that you wrote your first poem, Danny. On to the second. And Mitch, on to the second."
That's
It,
very exciting. That's really cool.
we have about another 10 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, please do put them in the chat. Um, are you doing any more promotional work for Rein It In?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be having a book launch hopefully at the end of June, just to give myself a bit of breathing space from when it will be actually out there. Um, so I'm looking to do that hopefully in Waterloo, and I'm still trying to secure a venue, but that'll be really exciting. So I'll be getting that out there, and I'll be headlining a few nights as well. When I have a book, I'm gonna, when I actually have it, I'll be able to put myself out there for kind of feature spots a little bit more, I hope. So I'm doing Process Productions in a couple of months. And I'm also going to be, this is a very full circle moment for me actually, going to be one of the headliners for Grizzly Pear, which was the night that I ran in Birmingham. So that one's got
Nice.
new people running it now. So it's really lovely. So I'm going to be doing that, which feels emotional and full circle. Um, yeah. So I'm hopefully going to be out and about, going to more open mics as well. I don't go to as many open mics as I would like to, just because life and busy and I get a lot of poetry fatigue and burnout sometimes with the community, which is no one's fault. It's just inevitable. Um, so, but I'd like to go to more things and put myself out there a little bit more as well as we all have to promote ourselves at the end of the day. Um, yeah, someone said to me yesterday, someone was very kindly asking me for some editing work that they commissioning me for maybe, and we were discussing it, and they said, well, we need to put money into the community so that we can buy each other's books. And that's exactly how it feels. And that's exactly how it is. And it's kind of funny, but I'm like, yeah, it's a very nurturing environment where we're like, well, if you have a project or something, we're going to go to the nights, we're going to support each other, we're going to buy whatever it might be. It doesn't even have to be monetary, but I just think that is a really nice kind of example or microcosm of the overall community, to be honest.
Love that. And I'm just gonna see what Yoda says. You spoke of hobby poets. How do they fit into the? Okay, I was gonna say I really love that. That's such a lovely note to end on. But Yoda has said you spoke of hobby poets. How do they fit into the UK community?
Oh, like the thing is that everyone's writing poetry for different reasons, and sometimes it's multiple reasons at the same time. I'm not saying a hobby poet is, a bad thing or a negative. I think it's really important, and it's an incredibly important outlet for anyone for any reason. So they fit in as much as everyone else. And sometimes hobby poets also are published poets and are really and within their own right, but they might consider themselves in that way as well. Like they're like, well, this is one of the things that I do. Like, there are poets who are directors and actors and maybe not even creative, but just are good at many things. And so, a jack of all trades kind of thing. But they're really good at poetry, and so they fit in as much as anyone else
I think
in the scene.
I think the only difference is a hobby poet will fit in wherever they want to fit in. I think the only difference
Mm.
between a hobby poet and a career poet, if you like, is the personal aspirations of the individual.
Yeah.
So a hobby poet isn't going to be turned away from a door like an open mic door because they're a hobby poet. The
Mm.
I think the difference is the aspiration of the poet, the individual poet.
Yeah.
You're only, a career poet, it will look to do um, talks or will seek out those headline spots, whereas a hobby poet may may not want to do that. They may also want to
Mm.
do that just because they get a kick out of it. But I think
Yeah.
the difference is purely mindset of the individual, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. All of that.
Sweet. Well, I think we'll finish it there. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
joining us, Ellie. I really appreciate it. It's been a lovely 2 hours talking to you. Congratulations on reining it in, and I
Thank
wish you
you.
all the success. And hopefully, I will. I'm sure I will bump into you at some point somewhere along the line.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely. And I hope you have a wonderful week ahead to you and to anyone who is watching as well.
Perfect. And same to you as well, Ellie. Thank you so much. Guys,
Thank you.
that's it for this evening. I will catch you as always in the comment section of the playback. And if you have any questions, if you're watching this playback and you have any questions you'd like me to forward on to Ellie, just leave them in the comment section and I will do so. But otherwise, I'll see you in the comment section of Tuesday's video. And happy writing. Good night. See you all very, very soon.
Good
See you later.
night.
Night, guys.
Cool. It was great. It was really lovely. Thank you. It was fab. Mhm.